the garbage truck was collecting garbage, and I hear a clanging on the street of the cans and putting the garbage in. I looked through my window, and I was astonished. There was no goal on the street. There was a lot of red brick buildings, and I'm like, okay, am I at the right place?
Good day and welcome to the universe. It is a special day. It is a day in which we take some time out to honor sportsmen and women around the region on Football Insight. It is a day when we try and make sure that we find the folks who have pioneered for a number of years and still continuing to apply the trade. Our special guest this morning on Football Insight, as Calvin Blankendale and Vernon A. Springer welcomes him, is Lenny Taylor, a Caribbean man. And when I say Caribbean, I'm not just talking about being born in Jamaica. I'm talking about St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Kitts and Nevis, Antigua and Barbuda, Anguilla, Dominica, St. Lucia. He touched the entire OECS. In fact, I call him Mr. OECS for football because Lenny's phone was always ringing off. And everybody wanted to get an insight as to what was happening with football in St. Kitts and Nevis at the time, and even in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But more so, I want you to get to understand who Lenny Taylor is, because Lenny Taylor has also played professional football. So Lenny, welcome to the program of Football Insight. And for me, it is indeed a pleasure to have you sharing the same stage on Football Insight program.
Thank you very much, Vernon. Thank you very much, Calvin. It's an opportunity that I like a lot to be able to speak to my folks about football and the experiences that I've had in North America and the Caribbean, and motivate everyone to move forward to in the 21st century and get prepared. Again, this is not a sport, it's a multi-billion-dollar business. And I'd like to see our folks not at the periphery of the business, but delve directly into the business and create opportunities and pathways for our young people so that they could be millionaires.
Fantastic. So, Mr. Taylor, the excitement of leaving Jamaica and going to another country, definitely a different climate coming from this tropics, going into the cold North America element, having to play soccer not when you want to, but when the games were being scheduled. What was the biggest challenge leaving, the warm tropics and going to the United States?
Well, I can remember the first morning I woke up. We were always told that in America, the streets are paved with gold. Yeah. And I remember the first morning I wake up, and there was the garbage truck was collecting garbage, and I hear a clanging on the street of the cans and putting the garbage in. I looked through my window, and I was astonished. There was no goal on the street. There was a lot of red brick buildings, and I'm like, okay, am I at the right place? Anyhow, I adapted. I was young enough, so I adapted. And but the major challenge was now living in a community where it's multicultural, it's Latin, it's Anglo, it's Black Americans. And at those days, there weren't a lot of Caribbean people in New York City. Mm. But the challenge of going out and playing and training in the cold was a shock and something that I had to get used to. With the love of the game, I didn't mind that. I just wanted to touch the football.
Great. So I'm going to fast forward real quick because, you have a long legacy and history. and we have a diverse platform here with young and old, people that have come from the Caribbean, people that are in different islands, and also, like you said, they have never been to Jamaica, but their parents are from the islands and are living in the United States, etc. I'm just going to go straight to the big one itself. You've played with Pele. Not many people have done that. Everyone has the nostalgia. We all call him the greatest player ever. What was the number one thing from Pele that you still remember today that you say that made him so special, so magnificent?
Well, the first thing I'll touch is his humbleness. Okay, he's the most humble person that I've ever met. New York Cosmos was playing against LA. I think LA at that time had Cruyff. So he came into the room to watch the game. We were drinking a couple of beers and eating pizza. And when he came in, all the chairs were occupied. So I got up and I says, Maestro, siéntese aquí. So I get up from my chair to give the king my chair. He says, tu maestro. And he sat on the floor next to me. That blew my mind. So his greatness never overshadows his human being qualities. That's away from him being the master, being the king. That will always stay with me.
When your body is challenged, it burns fuel and energy. Respond to every challenge with Altitude Sports Drink. It replenishes, restores, and prepares you for the next level. Altitude is uniquely formulated with an electrolyte blend and magnesia available in fruit punch, blue frost, and grape. Altitude. Raise your game.
I'll come back to you on Mr. Randolph Horton, who is a former principal of mine. He is a well-known person in the island of Bermuda, a former deputy speaker of the House, known for football, but also the number one passionate sport in the Caribbean, cricket as well. An outstanding man. I'll come back to him, but I'm pretty sure that Vernon has a lot of questions he wants to ask you. And so back to you, Vernon.
Well, first of all, you know, it's a touching moment talking to Lenny, and we could talk to Lenny for hours. So we'll have to do different segments when it comes to Lenny Taylor. But I just want to be able to just have Lenny reflect on his legacy from St. Vincent and the Grenadines and St. Kitts and Nevis combined together. They're two separate journeys. But for the folks on Football Insight, just to talk about the legacies of that journey as technical director in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and St. Kitts and Nevis, more or less twin island states, combined both for me, Lenny.
I got to St. Vincent. I got to St. Vincent 1992. I have done as much as I thought that I could have done in the U.S. Being an instructor of the U.S. football, coaching schools since 1978. Been at Medgaravers College, which is a wonderful black college in Brooklyn, New York. Tried to emulate what Lincoln Phillips did at Howard University, and did well there, won the Division II championship. That challenge sent me to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where I thought that the next experiment would be teaching Anglo-American players to play like Brazilians. That was the challenge. We conquered that challenge, winning several state cups and recognized throughout the U.S. as one of the places where we changed football in America too. From kick and run to knock it about and play the beautiful game. I went to St. Kitts and Nevis 2005, And with the experience that I learned in St. Vincent, I knew at that point, my experience of North America, I knew at that point we had to approach it differently. So my emphasis, Vernon, was, and Calvin was, you can't build a house unless you have a solid foundation. So I set out to start a long-term development strategy with under 13 boys, national, under 15s, under 17s, under 20s. Well, after 1 year, we won the Caribbean under 20 and was able to play in the CONCACAF playoffs in Mexico, where we lost 2-1 to Mexico. The powerful under 17 World Cup team that won the World Cup, we lost 2-1, and a very competitive game. We tied Jamaica, and we lost to Costa Rica in the last 2 or 3 minutes. So with that win, that would have given us a World Cup berth.
When your body is challenged, it burns fuel and energy. Respond to every challenge with Altitude Sports Drink. It replenishes, restores, and prepares you for the next level. Altitude is uniquely formulated with an electrolyte blend and magnesia available in fruit punch, blue frost, and grape. Altitude. Raise your game.
So Lenny, what are you doing now, right now? What are you doing at the moment?
Right now, I train some groups of players to give them the opportunity to young players so that they can catch their footing. And as you know, the development pathway, as I did my research on you to see that you are also in the coaching fraternity.
Yeah.
The development pathway from grassroots, which is finding the players to see if they have an upside. But 13, 14s, that's where it all begins. And if we have the players trained in the discipline of the game, fitness, techniques, tactics, psychosocial, and prepare them, they can have a tremendous future. So I work with kids in that area. I still do coaching education, which is a heartbeat, something that I liked, and something I think that is very important. And I'm trying to establish through the community colleges throughout the Caribbean a course that help prepare teachers for the elementary schools, because I believe with the lack of youth development programs or youth clubs throughout the Caribbean, it's important that the teacher that gets into the elementary schools begin to teach the fundamentals of the game properly. So I am trying to finish one course now, which is actually the first course in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We have done the theory through Zoom, and we're hoping to next month do the practical and get the first batch of teachers out. So when they hit the elementary schools, they'll be able to start presenting to these young players the principles of good football.
So when it comes to young persons, I know most young boys, what do you want to do? You want to be a professional athlete, soccer player or football, basketball. What's your first words to them? Do you look at their talent base, or do you always tell them, maybe education is the safest route to take? You get, your bachelor's degree or a trade, and then you see what talent you have and where it takes you.
You're 100% correct. And again, back from the Pele experience and Professor Julia Mazet, my mentor, academics is number one, and sports number two. It's only about 1% of players going to be able to make it to the professional game. But sports can be used as a discipline for you to embrace academics. So if it doesn't happen as a professional player, or you may get injured, you will now have that discipline of sports that you can put to your academics and become whatever your choice is. An educator, a lawyer, a doctor, whatever. But I believe that football is a thinking man's game. And the better you're able to think, it's the better you'll be able to read and assess the game and present yourself in a better light. So, yes, second thing I look at, the technical ability, how they embrace the football. And if there's a love, it has to be a love relationship between the football and the player. I look at that. I have taught to look at the legs. And what do you believe the boy or the girl, what height they will be? Okay. I look at their rhythm and I look at their desire. And then we move the project forward.
And one thing we haven't discussed was, the growth of the women's games, or the influence that girls now have on the global game. You look at the United States, Brazil, Mexico, and Canada. I'm not sure if you're aware of it. I was actually born in Holland, so Holland, Amsterdam. So, the Dutch national women's team is growing. And my father was born in Suriname. So, we have the differences of different islands give more attention to women's soccer. Some have the capital, some have the money, some do not have the cultural base. But what do you see in the Caribbean now, and maybe over 5 years? Where's the women's game going?
I think it's the game is behind, but there's enthusiasm. The enthusiasm is growing, and I think the culture is changing from machismo to giving them a chance to play. But it's still lagging with the desire to put the resources in. Coaching in the Caribbean, for me, at St. Vincent, no FIFA subvention. While I was at St. Kitts, in fact, I started the women's program there. It was $250,000 a year. With the resources that are put in now, we have no excuse in bringing the game to equilibrium, the men and the female. We have to, because it's a tremendous pathway for them. And I have experienced that the women even put more into training and trying to learn than the guys a lot of time. So we must give the Caribbean women a chance, because the opportunity is there and the resources are there. My big concern, though, still with the Caribbean, is the implementation of the information that surrounds the game. And even though we do have the coaching schools, I do believe that we need to develop programs that fits our needs, because we have certain challenges that the rest of the world does not have. And we need to identify those challenges and build our educational programs surrounding those challenges so we can improve. We can't be a Brazil, we can't be a Holland, we can't be a United States, because it's a whole different environment. So I would see that the elders of the sport come together and find what we need to do to accelerate the development, both male and female, of the Caribbean youths so that we can become competitive in the world of football.
Yes. So beautiful segue. I'm going to come back to Mr. Randolph Horton. As I said, former principal of mine, former teammate of yours with Pele at the New York Cosmos. He is also an advocate of education as being a former principal, heavily involved in developing young men and women through sport. It's quite fantastic that you both have the same pathway and mindset. Tell me a little bit about him and, what was his significant contribution to the Cosmos, but probably, the relationship that you have built over time.
Oh, Randy. I looked up so much to Randy Horton because he's such a big personality. Yeah. When Randy comes in the locker room, you know that he has arrived. Yeah. He's well loved by everyone. And of course, you know that quite a few times he led the scoring for the North American Soccer League as a big scorer. But Randy took me underneath his wings as a younger guy coming out of college. And I always find myself sitting next to him in the locker room. He'll talk to me and motivated me. And he's such, I remember I came to the to Bermuda to play with St. Kitts national team. And I would not leave the island until I had a chance to spend a little time with Randy. Okay. So he's one of my heroes. Yeah. And the education and the football, he was always preaching that. And he was always going to school, and it motivated me in that way. So Randy is someone that I can tell you helped me get to where I'm at with football on one hand and academics on the next hand. Wonderful human being.
Yes. So Randy was there and yourself, Mr. Horton, in a time with the growth of the game in North America, a lot of stars, Beckenbauer. But how did it feel to know that you were able to compete and sometimes even above the expectations with Mr. Horton being the leading scorer of the league and the MVP? Did that resonate inside of the rest of the Caribbean region? Did it empower young men to say, I can also go overseas and make it in a professional environment?
Yes, but not as much as it should, because the game was in its infancy in the United States. We had no television contracts until Pele came. Randy was from the old Cosmos before the new Cosmos. I got on 73 when we had like 3,000 people in the stands. Not until Pele came, the fledgling league moved from 3,000 to 5,000. We played that on Long Island. And when Pele came, it jumped to 90,000 automatically. Okay. At that time, I moved into coaching. 1974, I went to the United States soccer coaching schools. And at the age of 26, 27, I knew that there had to be an exit strategy because they were bringing in these players now from England, Germany, all over the world. And I knew I wanted to stay in this business, but I'm not going to be successful with these top players coming in. So I went to coaching school, got my C license, went on, got my B license, went on, got my A license. And I'm like, this is what I can carry now for the rest of my life, based on the fact that your playing days are going to be over real soon at 26, 27. So I segued into coaching and began a whole new dimension as a coach educator. And I am so happy that I did, because I could carry my playing experience into the academic experience and into coaching education. So I started 1978, starting coaching the D, E, and F license in the United States from a player. Hence today, I have trained over 10,000 coaches in the United States, the D, E, and F license. And I started the St. Kitts and Nevis coaching schools, starting at the D license. And coaching education had become the main part of my being up until today. So the segue with the international players coming into coaching schools, I thought that was really what made Lenny Taylor be able to stay around for over 40 years.
When your body is challenged, it burns fuel and energy. Respond to every challenge with Altitude Sports Drink. It replenishes, restores, and prepares you for the next level. Altitude is uniquely formulated with an electrolyte blend and magnesium available in fruit punch, blue frost, and grape. Altitude. Raise your game.
Now you have such a legacy, not only back in the Caribbean and from your island, Jamaica, but now North America, the Black Soccer Coaches Association, the pinnacle for individuals that are like us, feeling welcome in the game, being part of the game, since, as you mentioned, it was more a North American, and then the Europeans came to the United States. And even though you and Mr. Horton made your mark, you saw the change. So how has this organization not only helped from the coaching side, but also connecting with young people that are trying to get academic scholarships, and knowing that there are coaches out there that look like them, think like them, and will probably give them a chance as well?
Yes. Well, I think it started with Mr. Lincoln Phillips, who probably was the first successful Black coach in the United States. And I used to go to Lincoln's camp, and I used to work Lincoln's camp, and I used to talk with Lincoln. And at that time, we were the two Black A-license coaches in the United States. And it evolved, and there was a need for us to link together, the Black coaches to link together. And it grew from strength to strength. Now it's a staple in United Soccer, and the motivation for helping young Black players, young Black coaches to get into the system. The association is doing a wonderful job in helping these young men and women get university coaching jobs, university scholarships. And I hope that they will even go from further strength to the point where we can help professional players get into the MLS, or to be more than just one Caribbean background player as a head coach in the MLS. So I think there's so much more to grow, but they're on the right path. They're doing a wonderful job.
Thank you. Now, MLS, we used to think that the game in the United States was inferior, that everything was in Europe or South America. Now, when I look at MLS, it's the seventh ranked league in the world. I look at Atlanta United or FC, 75,000 people in a purpose-built stadium. We just talked about before we came on air that it's not only academics, but it's also sports, and it's a business, something that we have not recognized in our region or have been able to capitalize on. Where do you see MLS going from where it is now? Actually, from where it came from your era to where it is now. I have my opinion, but I would like to hear from you since you've seen the evolution of the game in the United States.
Yes, I think the MLS is the fourth or fifth most watched league in the world. So they have grown. I would like to see more African and Caribbean players in the league, because I do believe that that part of it has not opened enough as yet. Like I says, we have the Colorado coach, of Jamaican background, grew here. The captain of my team, the St. Vincent and the Grenadines national team, Ezra Hendrickson, is in Ohio, the Ohio franchise, the defending champions. But we would like to see more Caribbean coaches get involved. Now, I think the biggest thing is that in America, they claim that the Caribbean people don't attend the games. The Latin does in high numbers. So since it's a business, the players and the coaches tend to be more from a Latin background. So we have some work to do to bring the Caribbean and the African diaspora into equilibrium with the Latin and the Anglo, so that we have a little bit bigger share of the market. I think it will also improve the game too.
Yes.
So I am hoping that that change will make, and we're depending on people like the Black Soccer organizations to help foster that change.
Yes, because when I look at the United States, you know, the USL 1 and Division 2, you do see a lot of players of, you know, Afro-Caribbean descent playing in those leagues, but they haven't been able to move into, you know, the highest level of competition in the United States.
That's correct.
Even though they have the talent, even from a coaching pool side.
That's correct. That's correct.
And how important is the collegiate process today and maybe for the future? Because I believe that, you know, as young men, we believe that the pathway was to go to college, play at the highest level you could, and then you will be recruited into MLS. But MLS now with their own academies, if you're not in them or you're not even in a certain extent a lower tier in Europe where you're still affordable for MLS, then how is that Afro-Caribbean player seen if they're not directly in that MLS academy?
Well, you've touched on a very important point, Calvin, because it's a change now in the US. Scholarships to college now would strictly be for education and the recreation of playing football. I think the draft will be no longer, if it isn't already. And you are not going to segue into the MLS maybe 0.5% from college. Now, the under 13, 14 MLS academies is where everything begins now for MLS. You go through to U18, and then you're owned by the club, as it is in Europe or the other parts of the world. So what I do believe is that the football federations of the Caribbean has to start a program similar to what the MLS Academy is doing. Qualified coaches, 14s, teach them the game, develop them, because at 16, you should start to be looked at by professional clubs. So everywhere else in the world at 18, you're a professional player. So we have to redo what we're doing and start a long-term development philosophy of identifying young players in pools 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18s, and build a foundation for the national programs. If the child can make the under 17 World Cup team and you can compete, then you have a chance to become an MLS player or a player for any clubs in the world. But you have to be identified by the latest 16 years old. Our culture doesn't provide for that sort of development in the Caribbean, and that's what we must do, or else we're going to be spinning top in mud. So college now is for an education, not for the professional, because you get out of college 20, 21. You're practically too old already if you have not been identified. So we must take a step back, build our youth programs in the Caribbean, prepare the child to be identified at 16 years old, and give that child the opportunity to get into the professional game.
Yes, definitely a change from when we were coming along about how important college was for the professional route in the U.S., but that's no longer the number one recruitment or draft process. Let's go back to the Caribbean, our region. FIFA and CONCACAF have done a great job recently. I say recently because they've really changed a paradigm shift into supporting the programs at a national level, funding of referees, youth academies. The national youth programs are now able to be funded and travel and play competitions from an under 15 age group and up, even CFU. But outside of the national programs, from what I've seen, there's still challenges at the club level because there's not a large revenue stream or TV rights streams, which all other international competitions have. What can we do to strengthen the clubs in the Caribbean at a grassroots?
Wonderful question. I think some of the subvention that comes through from CONCACAF, FIFA and CONCACAF, needs to get to the clubs. Especially, even at the beginning, the club development programs. If you have strong development programs at the club, you're going to develop strong pools, age group pools. It's difficult for the clubs to find the funding. As you know, the private sector gives sparingly in the Caribbean. So if some of the subvention can be earmarked to help the clubs develop, and they put that resources in their youth development, we're on the right track. I know most of the islands, based on culture, love their club championships. That's wonderful. But you have to have a base to supply that club championship. If you develop the base, then the club championship quality will raise. So we got to find a way in which to help the clubs with some funding so it can help the base, because if you have no base, you have nothing. Yeah. I don't want to be critical, but when you were looking to get your best players from England, um, or Holland, it shows that you're not doing any development. I do believe that those players should support, for example, good spine players from goalkeeper to center back to center midfield to striker. You may go to look for quality in those positions. But if you're not developing up your wing backs and your outside midfielders and your wingers, then you're actually not doing anything. So we must switch off now to start our strong development program. And if you're bringing players in, you bring in players in who can help you become stronger or can be role models to the younger kids on the teams. I think that old model of bringing players directly to make your national team is dead. It's over. And if you see, like now what's happening, the clubs, say in England, don't want their players to go to the red zone countries to play World Cup. Just by a snap of the finger, yeah, you can be from a good team with good promise and possibilities to segue back to your own players who are not prepared for the challenge, and poof, there goes your World Cup dream. So it is so important to develop the base. If no other time, now.
When your body is challenged, it burns fuel and energy. Respond to every challenge with Altitude Sports Drink. It replenishes, restores, and prepares you for the next level. Altitude is uniquely formulated with an electrolyte blend and magnesia available in fruit punch, blue frost, and grape. Altitude. Raise your game.
Yes, clubs in the Caribbean. Let's go to the United States. Most clubs and organizations, even though they're grassroots, they're run by persons who are compensated for their time and effort. 3,000-4,000 playing members having to pay, anywhere from $500 to $3,000 from a youth level. In the Caribbean, we do expect our elite coaches or persons who are at the clubs to try to do it for a stipend and sometimes free because someone did it for you. But is there a thin line between organizing grassroots organization or trying to professionalize the sport in our region because everyone else is becoming professional?
Let's see how I can answer that question. We now must go back to educated coaches. I say that because Pele says he would never coach, first thing, because I would expect everyone to do things as easy as I did. So I would never, ever, ever, ever coach. And he has held his word, and he has never coached. But we must be careful to take the outstanding past player to become coaches. We have to be very careful. I'm not knocking the system, but we must be very careful. Because you can carry the old ways that you have learned as a player into today. And it's a whole new game. It's different principles. It's different understanding. You need to get your coaches on the island, not just trained properly, but be able to learn through observation in different places so that they can see how things are done and they can compare and contrast. When the coach is of that level, he should be paid properly. If you are typing him and asking him to do it for national pride, it will only go so far. You have to have a cadre of coaches that you're investing in. And they should be able to get an education, not just in the Caribbean, but in different places in the world, so they can return and put the sociology of their own island into the information and the observation that they have done in different places to come up with a unique training or development model that suits our children. So the days of coaching based on the fact that you are a top player coming to the youth sector, you got to be careful, because early introduction ensures early proficiency. They have to get the good information that is relevant to their sociology early, very early. Those coaches need to be paid, and paid well. The better coaches or the best coaches should be with the young players.
Thank you. When we're talking about coaches, you see a lot of strong federations, UEFA, of course, North America. But in our region, even if you're thinking about CFU, is there a lot of sharing of information between coaches and administrators, or is it more done in silo? I am the best island this year. I'm going to keep the information for me. Next year, it's going to be Jamaica. Or are we actually collaborating to say we need a strong Caribbean competition between the countries to elevate the game outside of fully FIFA sanctioned events?
Yeah, that's something that we need to have some coaches convention, like a coaching convention every year, where we
Can I stop
can
you right there?
share
Can I
information.
stop you right there? Because I'm someone I like to breathe stuff into existence. A question was posed. You have said that we need to have a coaches convention. So next year, this time, I'm putting my finger up. Even if it's through an online platform, we will have a group of coaches online to at least discuss the game or have a forum, and that can be the start of something similar to how the Black Soccer Coaches Association started. Especially in the pandemic, we may not be able to be physically getting together financially, health-wise, but we can get on a platform. And I'm making you the chairman of that forum right now. So trust me on that. Sorry to interrupt, but I had to break it into existence. If someone
Pressure.
So keep talking, sir.
Yeah, that's very important. And I also will segue to say that the diaspora Caribbean coaches need to be embraced in the Caribbean because we share the same sociology. And there's a wonderful thing that I would recommend all coaches to research: the sociology of sports. The Caribbean diaspora coaches have seen a little bit more. They're in it day and night, and they have a responsibility to give back. So I think those coaches should be embraced a little bit more by the Caribbean associations, because we know exactly what they're facing, because that's part of our history. On the right hand, we know how things are done in first world, quote, first world. And it's easier for us to bridge the information and give it to the various islands. Number two, as Peter Tosh says, wherever you come from and wherever, as long as you're a Black man, you're an African. And we have the responsibility to help our folks to be exposed to the finer parts of the game. Psychology or coaching, which is something that I think that nobody delves in the Caribbean, um, so that we can deal with the motivations and not just the X's and the O's. There's other things that surrounds the game that needs to be exposed to our folks. And if you're from Jamaica, you should be able to help the Trinidadians. If you're from Trinidad, you should be able to help the Caymanian. We should have this coaching fraternity where ideas are being shared. Because the region, if you look at it, let's go CONCACAF. You have North America, the big three. You have Central America, and then we're down here at the Caribbean. What can we do to bring equilibrium within the region? So we have to start, and the black soccer coaches in America, I think, should be interacting a little bit more with the Caribbean associations and the Caribbean coaches, because we've got a lot of work to do. And the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. So we need to come together, share methods, and work in conjunction with each other so that our accelerated development can be a little bit faster. Don't expect other people to come in to do our work. We'll be waiting until we're weary. We have to find our folks and bring them in to help close the gap a little bit faster.
Yes, thank you. In all other regions, multinational corporations are heavily funding through sponsorship or community grants the playing of sport for young people, and definitely through football or, in North America, soccer. In the Caribbean, we see it based on an event base. I'll do something today. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it tomorrow. Where is the disconnect, and where can we come together from the sports side, government, because we always rely on government, but they can't give it all. But there are large corporations that are making a lot of money in our region. I believe there should be some more long-term relationships financially, not just on paper, because they are taking the funds out of the region, but I don't believe it's coming back into the region for the larger sport. Do you agree on that?
100%. And yes, the companies give sparingly in the Caribbean. And we have to understand that sports is mini life. The way you control the behavior of the youths in the islands is to have them early enough associated with sports. It will eradicate gangs. It will eradicate the behavior of the young people, which is deemed negative. Only sports can do that. So the more the investment in sports, and that investment is handled professionally and responsibly, it will deter the youths from the antisocial behavior, because they are taught early enough that sports can be a vehicle for education or other parts in life. And if governments and multinational corporations in the Caribbean put some effort in that direction, I will think that, I do really believe that that will curtail the antisocial behavior that is exploding across the Caribbean. So this is something that I think we should preach and push on. It's a social responsibility of these companies to return funding to where they're making their money.
Okay. Thank you. Let's get to the actual excitement of sports. I believe you are an ambassador for the Ireland Open Cup. Am I correct on that?
Yes, I am helping to promote that aspect of football because as I just said, I believe that if you wait for others to come and do it for you, you'll be waiting for a long time. So we have to take up the mantle to help our own kids, identify them early, give them a vehicle that can take them. And we can't just rely on the national teams. We can't rely on somebody come and find us. We have to try to do what is necessary to help our kids get on a platform for future life. So yes, I believe in the concept, and I think that is one of the ways in which we can help our own. It is called self-help.
Another topic I wish to bring up. I'm currently the executive director of the Bermuda Cricket Board, so the other sport which is very large in the region, passionate. The 1970s, 80s West Indies team brought us all into this global game with a lot of pride and passion, and still there. But there's been talk lately, just like similar to the United States where they had NFL and soccer, that we need to build sports-specific stadiums. Is that something also in the region? Because in Bermuda, we share grounds with soccer and cricket. Is that something that is possible financially? Is there enough land in the region to do that?
There's enough land, but I don't know if there's enough will. And people are seeing that you can build it if you have enough money to put down that wicket that you can take up and play football the next day, and then put it back down and play cricket the next day. That works, but that's a very expensive venture. But we need football stadiums where football can be dealt with at the higher level. Sometimes you look at the parks or the stadiums in which a national team plays in, and it is not up to scratch. If you look sometimes at the fields that football is played throughout the Caribbean, it's not up to scratch. So we need to improve a lot, Calvin, in that category. And so it might be a joint venture between government and private sector to build fields. But fields for football needs to be built throughout the Caribbean. Sometimes you have one decent field, but all the games are played there. So it starts out decent at the beginning of the season. By the mid-season, it gets bumpy and it gets rough and it's not taken care of. So this is why we need to have a few fields that you can spread it around. So another important area that I think the Caribbean needs to think about is sports tourism. How government or tourism department can bring funds in the island through sports tourism. As they say, if you build it, they'll come. We have sand, sea, sunshine, wonderful area in the Caribbean. If we build good facilities, just through tourism, putting heads in bed, making money, international teams will come for training or for playing matches. I don't think we have yet grasped the ideology of sports tourism. And that's one way in which we can put money in our coffers.
On
So,
on that note, I'm going to leave it there because we definitely are going to have you back, as our good friend Mr. Vernon Springer said. There were some technical difficulties, but we'll have you back for a second segment because there's too much information for you to share with the region and to speak on the next aspect, which is going to be the business aspect of sports. And I wish to thank you on behalf of the Caribbean Sports and Entertainment Management Group. We were launching Football Insight, On Drive, and the Value of Sports to give people in our region a first-hand look at what's going on in our region. We read all about the Manchester United and Manchester Cities, but what are we doing for ourselves? And also for those who have migrated out of the region to the UK, Canada, US, just to name a few countries, that they can stay connected and maybe hear about how they can assist back in their hometowns or countries as well, because it's all about, one global world now. So thank you for coming on. Appreciate having you. And in closing, I'd like to see if you can make a few remarks to your good friend, Mr. Randolph Horton.
Randy, I don't call him, I said Randy, the big man.
The big man.
The big man. Always look up to you. You have touched my life in a positive way. And you're one of the early ambassadors that helped spread the sport of football in the United States. It was a pleasure knowing you, learning from you. I look forward to seeing you soon again and to recap some of the old days and catch up with you to see what you're doing, my brother. As we say, massive respect, Randy.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. And I would say thank you to you and much respect to you. And we've spoken something into life, and I'm pretty sure we're going to be in touch on this. We are going to launch a forum for the coaches in the Caribbean to come on, to have those elite coaches speak to the grassroots, to tell us their concerns and wishes. And hopefully it's the start of something. No one knows where we'll go, but we have to do something for ourselves. As you say, we cannot wait for people to come and assist us. Once we have to create our own platform and legacy. So on that note, thank you very much. You have a wonderful weekend, and I look forward to talking to you soon and continue to do the good works, and good health to you and your family. Take care.
Thank you very much, Calvin. Likewise yourself.